Hi there, I'm Alexa. I'm a hip dysplasia patient and recovering from my periacetabular osteotomy on my left-hand side at the moment, about 5 months post-op. I also happen to be a running coach and a sports massage therapist, so sharing a few little tips that will hopefully be useful, particularly today from a sports massage point of view. So one of the things that I do with my massage customers, clients, is work on scar tissue. So I thought I'd give it a little bit of a couple of tips of things you can do to sort of work on your own scar post-surgery. Obviously, the really important thing to say first of all is please do get clearance from your doctor or your surgeon before you start any of this work. It's really important to make sure that the scar has completely healed and the tissues underneath, so stuff that you can't necessarily just see by looking at what the skin is like before you start doing any scar work into it. So we want to make sure that all of those tissues have knitted together and healed really nicely before you start then kind of basically moving them around and trying to undo some of that scar tissue that we've got going on. And the next thing to say is everyone's scar looks really different. I think from a lot of the photos that I've sort of seen in various Facebook groups of people's post-operative scars, lots of different approaches, surgical approaches, so don't be afraid if your scar looks a little bit different to somebody else's. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways of working on your scar, but starting off with just kind of finding your way around with it a little bit and getting familiar with the scar itself, which I think is really important. So this is my periacetabular osteotomy scar. So it comes up from just the neckline here up here. I had some sort of post-operative issues with the glue that was adhered to me, which is why it's got some interesting little areas off to the side as well. And the first thing you might notice with working on the scar here is that I'm not using any kind of lotion or oil at the moment. So the skin and my hands are quite clean and dry with no oils or lotions on them. And that's because first of all, we actually just start by placing our fingers on a piece of skin, and we're not gliding our fingers over the skin. We're trying to glide the skin over the tissue underneath. So just working your way around that scar area, moving the skin in different directions at different times, in different spaces, maybe a little circle upwards and away, and you might actually be able to feel that the skin is happier to stretch in one direction versus the other. And you can also I can maybe feel a little bit of an area in my pelvis that isn't quite as sort of smooth and rounded as it was before, perhaps some screws in there. It's kind of nice to just get a little bit of a feel for what's going on and getting familiar, get comfortable with that area of your body again. The next thing to do is kind of doing that with both hands a little bit. So a couple of fingers either side of the main scar itself, and then just gently feeling if you can move around that skin. So can you stretch it a little bit with your fingers pulling away from each other? Can you then turn it slightly the other way? And you'll notice that if I was to do that on sort of non-scarred skin, the skin is fairly elastic and sort of bouncy, and it will pull in different directions. Over the scar, you tend to see a little bit of that wrinkling, puckering. It might be pulling a little bit. You might feel little sort of almost sharp pinprick sensations as you're doing this. But it's a nice way of just gently starting to work into that scar tissue and getting things moving. Your aim is to get the different layers of tissue under the skin gliding over each other again. And because they've had somebody cut through them, there'll be a little slice in the centre where they're not able to glide. So we're trying to get that glide back really. So doing that kind of pull and twist is really nice. And once you get kind of familiar and comfortable, doing it over the scar itself. You might be able to feel, so I can feel here underneath, there are actually, as I start to press a little bit further in, there are areas that just feel a little bit more solid. So there might be some internal stitches left in there. There might be areas of kind of scarring more deep in the tissue. So if you feel one of those areas, like I've got a little sort of more solid patch here, just pressing on it gently and a little round circle on that area. Every day, if you can, spend 5 minutes on it, a little bit of self-care post-operatively. Another really nice one to do, and I'm not going to be able to demonstrate it very well on my scar area at the moment because the tissue's still too adhered for me, so I'll demonstrate it on my little paunch of a tummy instead, is grabbing a little bit of a piece of your skin and then kind of rolling it. So grabbing forward with your fingers and rolling it so that your thumbs follow. So a little bit of a roll like that, and that can be a really nice way of just lifting up the skin. See if I can do it over this top edge of my scar here. Okay, so that bit's a little bit looser. It will lift up and you can see a little bit of that puckering that I was talking about as things are stuck. So just using that technique of lifting a bit of skin and rolling it, ooh, yeah, it becomes a bit more difficult across that area as everything's bunched together, is another really nice one once you've gone a little bit of this initial scar work in there to start with. So I hope that's really useful. I think the key benefit of working on people's scars for me when I'm doing it professionally is just to give people a bit of confidence about that area of the body. So start off just having a little bit of feel around, get familiar with it, get confident with it, and then once you've built up that confidence, you can start doing more and more different techniques. I hope that's helpful.